The state needs money. And if the state needs money, where's the state going to get money from other than the citizens of this said state? And that's the position we find ourselves in when we're looking at the property tax and the realities of this situation, where we have quite a few people getting legitimately worried about the taxes that they see on the horizon. And the reason for them that the government is giving is that the state needs the money. And in the first place, I would plug again this as part of the ongoing discussion I've been having about things like paying for healthcare and not paying for healthcare, having free or private healthcare. And when we're talking about things like that, and we talk about the reality that many people would not be able to survive in a system if it needed private healthcare, then bear in mind that free healthcare is never really free. The only reason it is free is because of the taxes or whatever money else the government can make that the government collects. So the question always is, to me, when I'm looking at things being free or us paying privately for them, is who do I think is a more efficient spender of money? Do I think the government, the state, can spend money at a more efficient rate than me, than nearly any other citizen? And to me, when I look around and I look at small individuals, I look at a grandmother with a pension and 3 of her grandchildren that she shouldn't be having the responsibility of raising. But when I look at her and I see how she manages her finances, and she never has to go into deficit spending, and okay, I understand it's a grand oversimplification and running a country is not just like that. But there is some very obvious tendencies to be inefficient in how governments spend. And inefficiency aside, there's also plain wastefulness. And then inefficiency and wastefulness aside, there's also blatant corruption in all of this. And to give and keep pumping more money from citizens into the state, for the state to spend, and because we believe that they would spend it so wisely, becomes less and less of a believable statement. So now, looking at it from that angle, I could see the opinion where you would like the government to get as minimum resources as possible so that they would have to use it as widely and as fiscally responsible as possible. Because on the other hand, I don't see that they use it better. And let's go into an article here where one of the government ministers, a senator of ours, is making an appeal for the added money that the state needs. And there's something interesting to notice in this. Let's look at this. West, state needs money, forced to borrow from shrinking coffers. Government Minister Alison West says now is the time to collect taxes, but is assuring that the state will balance this move in providing for those who are experiencing hardship due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, Miss Alison West, now this is my go-to strategy. Anytime I see a government or opposition or any kind of public official and they're talking about anything to do with public resources, I go to my handy dandy Integrity Commission no-filers list to see if these politicians or these public officials that are pontificating to us about what the country needs and what the country should do, if they are doing their simple duties. So I went to the list, and it's really simple once you know how to do it. You go to the list, you get the up-to-date list, you tap Control and F so you can search the entire list, and I typed in this Alison West's name. And lo and behold, Senator the Honorable Alison West in the year 2019 is listed as failing to declare source of income, assets and liabilities, and statement of registrable interests. So, Miss Alison West, could you please go do that before you come to tell the country about taxes? Please? So we would know for sure that you aren't a thief, and that while you're talking about how much the state needs, that we are making sure the state needs are being met by our resources and not your personal and private needs. So could you please go make sure that is taken care of? And really and truly, I think we could end this discussion right there. Once her name is on that list, everything else she says could be ignored. But let's not do that, otherwise the video will end right here. So let's go on and see what else Miss Alison West had to say. West was previously minister in the Ministry of Finance and was then given the public administration portfolio. So they are moving from ministry to ministry while still failing to do what they are supposed to do. During her tenure in the finance ministry, she spent a lot of time working on the establishment of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority, but she spent no time apparently working on her declaration. The TTRA Bill 2021 will be debated in the Senate tomorrow. This bill has flopped several times before because it required a 3/5 special majority and therefore needs opposition support. However, the government has removed the special majority provision and the bill can now be passed with a simple majority, thereby not requiring opposition support. I don't know all the technicalities of what you need to remove and if it has this or if it has that, what it would require, but somehow in the maneuvering of the bill, they removed a bit that required the opposition support, so now they can pass it without the opposition. And I could understand that from different angles, as I tried to do multiple times. On the government side, personally, I believe probably the most efficient style of governance might be dictatorships, a benevolent dictator. If God himself ruled earth with supreme power, it would be the most efficient thing. What he says goes and it happens. There's no bureaucracy that things need to take all the time to get done. So I could understand wanting to remove the bureaucracy and remove things that are holding back, especially when some things that may be holding back may have conflicting interests. I've heard some people allude that some members of the opposition are resistant to the Revenue Authority because if there's one centralized group authority where you could see resources and how they move, you may be able to tell when people are moving their nefariously gained resources. So there's some suggestion for that. But even beside that though, I could see from the other side where you want the checks and balances to at least allow the population the feeling like we're getting to see multiple sides of this. Because these people aren't God. In the situation where a dictator may be the best kind of rule, that's God, hopefully. And these people aren't. And these people aren't even telling us how they make their money. So with people like that, I would prefer to have as much discussion and openness as possible. And maybe not removing the opposition from being able to have a say on the discussion. That doesn't sound like a very democratic idea in this. That's just how I see it. And especially when you're talking about increasing taxes, to increase the taxes on an entire population and then remove a group that represents a significant chunk of the population from the discussion. Because let's be real, the United National Congress in Trinidad is representative of a certain base in the country. And that base in the country is very serious about land and property ownership, which is a very wise thing. I'm glad they are. But to then remove the general and typical and stereotypical representative of that base, to remove them from the discussion and taxing people for that property, you could understand how you could get some different songs inside of there. In a telephone interview with The Express yesterday, West said there's nothing clandestine or sinister about this move. Asked how would she respond to those who argue that now is not the time to impose taxes and establish a revenue authority, she replied, now is exactly the time to set up a revenue authority. A lot of people for a long time have not been accounting for their taxes. There's a drain on the state because of COVID and other related matters like the collapse of the energy industry in early 2020. Those things have put significant drain on the state. We have been forced to borrow money. We have been forced to withdraw money from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. So it is necessary for us to ensure that taxes are collected, she said. So again, to everyone who likes the gifts from the state, always keep in mind the gifts from the state are not gifts. They are things you are purchasing for yourself. The idea of the state, and this is, someone asked in one of the comments, what is my intention? What is the end game? Part of it is just giving the knowledge to allow people to be able to make better individual decisions. On the interview I did on the Gael, one of my goals that I said I have is greater individualism. And that is just it. I think better knowledge would allow for this individualism. So, to make the decision about free healthcare, we'd understand the decision isn't just whether I want the poor people to suffer and not be able to get healthcare, but the understanding that in free healthcare, it's me giving resources to people who I know are not the best managers and allowing them to use these resources and then giving me back free healthcare. So here's an idea. Now, I'm not sure if Trinidad is at a mature enough place to do such things, but you don't need the government to have a cooperative in something. A group of people could come together and decide that they will fund a hospital and provide free healthcare for some people. And very often what you find is when private citizens do that, the efficiency of it is far greater than the government. And I'm harping on the hospital angle and the free and privatized hospital because it's pertinent with the COVID-19 issue and it's easier to see the ramifications of it when we're looking at the vaccine issues and who wants to remain unvaccinated and who wants to be mandated to be vaccinated. It's easier to understand it from that angle, but it works for just about anything that the government gives to people. The government doesn't really give. You're paying for it yourself. There's a reality that the land and building tax, the property tax of sorts, was always part of our law. It's nothing new. Our law has taxes in it. And on a whole, that's something that we would need to address how we view it. How do you view taxes? How much taxes do you think you would be willing to pay to live in an area? How much do you want to give to the government to administer the duties of the state? What proportion do you want that to be? But the reality is, it is on our law books. And that is part of what this government says they are trying to address. Because the law that is on the law books is outdated. And what they are trying to do is streamline the law and bring it into modern times so that it could actually be effective and get something done. She noted, and this is West, the lady who did not declare her assets. That West, this is West. She noted the land and building tax regime was not sufficiently administered. The minister explained the main problem is that the valuations were not properly dated in some areas. So in Goodwood Park, for example, they would have been collecting tax based on assessments done 3 or 4 decades ago, whereas in places like San Fernando and Point Fortin, the assessments were done much more recently. So you have cheaper value properties in terms of market value being subjected to high property taxes because of the dates of assessment and on those properties, she explained. And I understand that. That's true. I could see the reasoning in that. But here's another side to it. I think the vast majority of people aren't even paying that property tax. And that's why many people aren't interested in streamlining it. Because it's not about them wanting to find out the real value of their property so that they won't be robbed in taxes. Many people aren't paying the tax in the first place, and their worry is that by sending in this valuation now, they are only now going to start to pay the taxes. And bear in mind, when I did the calculation, I showed how easily it could be that the parents of my generation, those would be the boomers, I'm not sure the exact age group, but the people right short of retirement right now, those may be in the prime age for home ownership. How many of them in the middle class, nothing wealthy, easily in the middle class, once they own a family home, how easily their family home's value could be at over 10,000 rental value per month. And that could lead you up in the 300s in terms of the property tax you would be owing with that rental value. And that is not an insignificant amount of money. So if people were paying nothing in the first place, now to bring in a tax that is going to introduce a $320 monthly fee, and that's if it's monthly. If it's yearly, where they have to accumulate that times 12 to pay someone, that's going to be very difficult. And you could understand why a lot of people are going to try to avoid paying that. And let's look at something for context to see why I could understand and why I agree that I don't really want to give more money to these managers, because they've shown that they aren't good at it. WASA managers under probe for $7.7 million bad deal. $7.7 million. And this is something that I always watch when you're looking at how government spends money. We're talking about $320 added to the fee to people's bills per month in a tax. Look at that number. And that number that many people are shuddering from in a corner. And then when you hear about the wastages inside of state companies and a government project that went over budget, and you hear the numbers they call 100 million, 1 billion, 7.7 million. This is $7.7 million. Do you know how many months of property tax someone would be paying just to pay off for this $7.7 million bad deal mistake that someone in WASA made? The Beleaguered Water and Sewage Authority, WASA, has launched a full-scale investigation into the dereliction of duty by two managers, which has resulted in the authority purchasing some $7.7 million worth of chemicals, some of which WASA no longer uses to treat its water. The unnecessary purchase of large quantities of chemicals has also left the authority with hundreds of thousands of dollars in expired products on its hands. So somebody got quite a deal and got away with $7.7 million. Who knows if the investigation would bring anything. But if we are to go on the track record of how those investigations generally go, is that $7.7 million gone, lost forever. And then when you're looking at that, how can I look at $7.7 million that could be just thrown away in a state company like that? And then I could look at someone within my parents' generation. I look at some family friend and I watch them with their nice put away home, and I know they worked 40 years for it and how hard they worked to reach that point. And I know their salaries may not necessarily be massive, so it's not like they're collecting a large amount of money per month now. And then can I reasonably look at them and see, I agree with Miss Alison West, the lady who hasn't declared her assets yet. I agree with her, and I think I should take $320 from my parents and their friends and give it to the people who are in control of the Water and Sewage Authority, who lost $7.7 million on expired chemicals and products they don't even use anymore. Is that reasonable? Is that really reasonable? That's all I have for now. I hope you were entertained or informed, and share the video to those who might like this kind of content. And don't forget to smash that like button, and do subscribe if you aren't subscribed yet. And I'll see you again tomorrow.
Can you feel the music rising with the time?